All right. Well, today we are with Pastor Jason for class, and I am off screen. So if you hear the ghost voice, I'm way over in the corner. Um, I've known Pastor Jason for about a year now. We got connected through a church planting network here in our city called it used to be called Mission Carolina Triad, and now it's called Christ Together Southeast. My pastor Will Plick kind of heads up this region for that, and Jason was in the middle and getting ready to launch a church, plant a church, and so he was. I think when I first met him, he was kind of meeting with the core team, developing leaders, kind of figuring things out, and our church is supporting his financially, about $1.50 a month,
That's right.
and
That's right.
and then maybe $1.75. And then our pastor has, I think, done some coaching and mentoring with Jason over the last year or two or so.
Year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're thankful to have him. Great sister church. They meet in the Southport community here in Winston, which is about 2.5 miles west of Piedmont's campus. So they're close to downtown, but kind of in that urban ring right outside of the kind of center city here. So he's going to share a little bit about them choosing a focus group. And so I sent him just a few questions that we'll kind of discuss and go through. This week's topic is discussing how do you choose a focus group? How do you know? Okay, I really feel like God is leading me to Winston-Salem to plant a church, but Winston-Salem is a conglomeration of multiple neighborhoods, communities, streets, sides of town, all that sort of thing. And so how do you pick? Do you say we're going to be a church for the whole city? Okay, well, that's a pretty big vision. How are you going to accomplish that? It's going to affect your structure. Or are you going to be a church for a specific community? And some of the unique aspects, our church, 121, is kind of 12 years ago said we want to be a church more for the city. And so our gospel communities are spread out geographically, which makes some things tough. And so our Sunday gathering is more like a bring everyone in from around town for worship, but then we scatter for mission in our more localized communities. Pastor Jason, though, as they began kind of envisioning Tapestry, really chose the Southport community. And so he's going to ask you a few questions about why they chose Southport, a little bit some of the demographic type ideas about it, what's going on there. And this will be this week in your prospectus. Jason, they are in teams of 3, and they're going to be building a prospectus essentially. So doing the research for it on a shared Google document, then they will put together a prospectus at the end. So there's 2 parts to this project. And so they will choose a city, choose a community, and then they'll be doing demographic analysis. Next week, the guys come in and show us how to do community mapping. So that kind of thing is happening. So Jason, let's kind of go through a few questions, kind of help. And guys, feel free to kind of interject and ask questions as you see fit. We've got about 30 minutes here, so we're going to use all of that time, the rest of the time here for Pastor Jason. So, Jason, tell us a little bit why you chose this Southport community to plant a new church. Start with something kind of basic.
Let me give the story before the story. I am probably the one of the most reluctant church planters that's ever existed. I was on staff at a church for about 9 years doing a variety of things. And about 2 years ago, God began to really put a weight on me that I couldn't explain and an itch I couldn't scratch. And through his sovereignty and through being in the Word and a lot of different things, he really confirmed a call to plant a church. And so that led us to do a lot of research, because generally when you plant a church, you go somewhere far away and drop in. But I've read some great books about how God a lot of times has positioned you in an area for a reason. And so we began to pray and think through. I had a core group of about 10 families. And we talked to the state convention, and they had given us 8 pockets of lostness that were in the Winston-Salem area. So we kind of mapped those out and began to look through those and pray through those. We took some field trips and drove through those different areas and began to see kind of where's God at work, look at the people God had given us as a core team, what are our gifts and talents, what's our backgrounds, where we're going to be able to be most effective. And so we narrowed those 8 down to about 4. And spend a little bit more time reading through those. We got some of the basic demographics on all those areas, and so we looked through some of those statistics and through the surveys and things that we had about those, and really kind of narrowed it down to 2 at that point, and spent some time in those 2 areas, one being South Fork and the other being on the other side of town in an area called Watown. And we looked at those 2 different areas and just really prayed God where he wants to be. And so one of the things that was a core value of our church is to be multicultural. We want to be a diverse church in that we believe the gospel bring people together that shouldn't hang out apart from who he is. And so even though we are pretty homogenous as a core team, we don't want to stay that way. And so I actually did spend an afternoon driving around the South Fork area and kind of pulled up in the middle of the community, and God just clearly laid on my heart, this is where you're supposed to be. And so we really began to dive into the details of the demographics we had and realized this was a highly diverse area. One of the most diverse areas actually in the city, which I was unaware of at that point. And so through lots of praying, through being in the Word, through some field trips, through driving around, through some prayer walking, God just really confirmed to us that that is the area where He wants us to be. From a spiritual standpoint, it's a community that's about 78 to 80% unchurched. So the statistics that's based on is that almost 80% of the people do not attend church at least once a month. So there's a huge need there, spiritually lost groups of people, and a very diverse group of people from multiple backgrounds. So all those factors weighed in for our core team as we really felt that's where God had landed us. And as we looked around, there really was not a consistent gospel presence there. There wasn't. There's some bigger churches and some dying churches, but there was no one really trying to engage the community with the gospel. There was still a lot of the mindset of come and see in our building, but not so much engage them where they are. So,
very cool, very cool. And what type of you talked a little bit about demographics, and tell me a little bit about what type of analysis did you do? Did you look at income levels, religious views? And I'm particularly interested in any kind of resources that you use. You mentioned the state convention, so kind of walk us through just those kind of research-based things that an outside group helped you with.
Okay. We got a couple different things from the state convention. Primarily, that's was our main source of information. They are partnered with a group called Mission Site, and they have tons of information that we got from there. There's also another group I'm trying to find. I tried to look for it last night. It was the name of it. I think it was called Precept Group that had given us some information. And they were very similar. One was based on more concrete analysis, and one was based on a generalization of the area. And what we did was we got the information from them, and they were based on a center of the zip code in our target area, and then it broke it down based on half mile, 2 miles, 3 miles out, and then we're going to break down every conceivable demographic nugget you could ever imagine: income levels, education levels, where they want to shop, what their preference of newspapers are, do they use the internet, spiritual background, are they receptive to gospel conversations. So really a number of households with kids, number of single parent households, the greatest needs they had that they believed that they had, or they physical needs, spiritual needs, whatever. And so we got tons and tons of information, which are really helpful. But the things about demographics is you have a lot to wade through. And so we waded through a lot of that and realized that there, within about a 3-mile radius of where we are, there's about 68 to 70,000 people. And when you base that on the number of people that percentagely are lost, it's a huge swath of people that are apart from Christ. And so what we also found, not only is it a diverse area from an ethnic background, but in that we found out that the elementary school at that point had, this was last year, had 32 languages represented at the elementary school. And so we began to engage there, meet some of the teachers, some of the parents. Served at a meeting where there were 3 translators just to have a parents' meeting. And so the ethnic diversity is huge. But then as far as demographics, when it's based on income and all these, it is really an eclectic area. I mean, you don't have abject poverty like you would in some parts of the city, but you definitely have those that are hungry. So it really runs a gamut from, you go down one side of our area, you have a country club. You go down the other side, you have tons of multifamily housing that maybe not are in the dire straits, but they definitely are probably living on some type of assisted living. And so you have everything in between. You have condominiums, you have new houses, old houses, meal houses, lots of single-parent families, lots of retired people. And so it's an eclectic group all around. And the demographics have been very helpful as we begin to look at kind of what are some ways to begin to engage the area. So it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you realize the diversity there, and you realize kind of where people are. But then the the weight of that is how do you engage that large of amount of diversity, not just ethnically, but spiritually, socioeconomically. How do you begin to engage those people with the gospel in a way that is relevant to where they are? So,
you find that you mentioned 32 languages represented at one elementary school, 3 translators just to have a PTA meeting. You find that there's like a common English language. Is that more for like the kids? I know many immigrant families, the parents and grandparents cannot only speak their native language.
Right.
What have you kind of discovered in that as far as like a language barrier?
I think it's interesting. We are currently meeting at an older Baptist church. We're using a chapel, and right across the street, literally outside their doors, the 3 houses next to the church is a German family that does speak English. I think in their home they speak German. Right next to them is a Hispanic family that only the kids speak English. The parents and grandparents are not. And then right beside them is a Southeast Asian family. I believe they're a Burmese family, and they are, what we can tell, are primarily Burmese speaking. And so I think I volunteered at the school quite a bit, and I think most of the kids there are fairly fluent and are able to communicate fairly well, but their parents and their grandparents are not. And so there's a huge breakdown once you get past that younger generation. And so trying to be effective in reaching that family is, you got to be pretty creative, because you might be able to get the kids into your ministry in order to engage them in like a backyard Bible club or something, but you're going to have a significant language barrier with the parents and the grandparents, and so you've got to really begin to break through. The gospel does break down all the barriers, but you got to be able to communicate. And so how do we engage that family as holistically with the gospel when there are those barriers that are going up? And so part of that is meeting a felt need, trying to feed them when they're hungry, love on them where they are, and as part of that, the beauty of partnership and collaboration. I know Calvary up the street from where we are does a lot with Southeast Asian peoples, and so it's not so much reinvented the wheel, but how can we serve them in our community, even if it's not under our necessary our banner of our church, which doesn't really matter, but how do we serve these people that God has put in this area? It's interesting. I was in a classroom this past spring, and there was a girl there from Egypt that spoke 3 languages fluently. So they're really intelligent kids. They are very well adapted, but I think that they once you get past them, I think there's significant barriers when it comes to engaging with families, purely just because of the language. And actually, next week we're serving at a Title I meeting at the school, and so it'll give us a second kind of touch with a lot of those families and try to see if we can engage them and make them feel better than we did even this time last year when we first met a lot of them. So.
You guys have any questions so far about any of the? I mean, to me, it blew my mind when I first met him. He was talking about South Fork and why they were going, and there was, we're here, we're in the Bible Belt of the South. I know very few non-English speakers, and especially ones who. I know a lot of bilingual, trilingual, but they're younger, they're teenagers. I've come across college students and whatnot. But to find that there are that many languages in one school, and that we actually have a school in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that has to have 3 translators to do a PTA meeting. That just kind of blew my mind. That's 2.5 miles from Piedmont. It's right down the road, and we see this diversity all across. It's increasing in every American city, Winston-Salem included. So. One thing I wanted to know, you did demographic study and research, got some of the facts and figures from the state, especially when it comes down to like percentage of lostness and that sort of thing. When you got like on the ground, you're playing the church, your people are kind of moving in, doing things in the community. Did you find that the demographic analysis and the percentages seem to be pretty accurate and reflective of the actual community?
I think that by and large, as we've spent time in the community doing some different things, it's been fairly consistent. I think there are some of the pockets of diversity we've not found yet. And I think the reason that is, Country Club Road is kind of where Southwood Communities kind of lands, but parallel to that is Old Vineyard Road, and most of all of that road is tons of multifamily housing.
Yeah.
And so those areas are very difficult to get into, and so you've got to begin to build relationships with someone there to engage the people that live there. I think most of the diversity that is wrapped up in this zip code is found in those areas.
Yeah.
And so some things that maybe we've not been able to see yet, or the different pockets of ethnic backgrounds we've not been able to find yet, I think they're probably mostly relegated to those apartment complexes, and we've just not been able to meet them yet. So our hope is that as we begin to meet people in the community, we'll meet with what we often call persons of peace that will allow us to get a foothold at some of these multifamily housing. There's one over there whose footprint, the size of it, is bigger than Calvary Baptist footprint. So it's a huge area and tons of people. So, but by and large, like I said, the demographics were pretty eclectic across the board. And as we've driven around, it really is pretty consistent. I'm sure that as we dive into some more specific demographics, as we get to meet more and more people, we may see some things that are not exactly lined up. But by and large, it's been very helpful and fairly consistent based on what we have read and what we have seen as we met people door to door. And when we've helped with some events, the church that we're meeting at, we've helped partner with them do some things in the community on the grounds where the church is. And the people that have come in for these events have been very consistent with the demographics we've seen. So it's been really cool to see that. And this goes to tell me that the research that we've been using was done well, and is very advantageous and helpful to get a really, like I said, I think it gives you probably more information than you'd ever use, but it gives you a lot to give you a really good picture of, I think what is helpful for me is a really good snapshot of the average person in your community and where they are from a spiritual background, financial background, all these different things, to how you engage them. That information is very helpful.
Yeah, so if you've done some of the textbook reading from Stetzer for this week in chapter 11, talking about choosing a focus group, he references how Rick Warren at Saddleback Church, California, how they put together Saddleback SAM. Basically, they took all the demographic kind of analysis of the community and said, okay, what is the average person here in our side of town? What does he look like? Income level, what do they do for hobbies? It's kind of, you have to be speaking very, very general, but even in a lot of these generalities, you can find some specific ways to focus on mission to that group of people. So with Jason here going to a side of town that is ethnically diverse, 32 different languages just at the elementary school, he has not said that they chose the Burmese population of South Florida. There's some planters do go and do something that specific, especially when there's a pocket of several thousand of one specific ethnicity. I had a friend in seminary. He and I walked in the graduation line together, and so during rehearsal, we were just kind of chatting and catching up. And he'd always wanted to go plant a church in Tibet, and he had married a girl who grew up as a missionary kid in Tibet, so she knew the language already. He's kind of hard for the Tibetan people. Had been on mission trips there and wanted to go back. So he was doing the international missions program at our seminary. But there were some health concerns about their family going back with him, and so basically he felt kind of dejected that he didn't have a place to go to. Well, guess what? New York City has a pretty big Tibetan population, and so he actually moved to New York City and planted a Tibetan church in New York City. And so he chose a focus group, which was basically one ethnicity, one language. And even though he wasn't able to get there geographically, he found where God has brought them to North America. That's why I think North American church planting is so key, is because we can actually hit the nations. That's part of some of the new strategy in planting churches, is thinking, when we got to a place like South Fork, instead of Tapestry Church saying we're going to focus on the Burmese people of South Fork, said we're going to focus on the people of South Fork. So they chose a focus group, even though it wasn't centered around one ethnic group of people. There's different kinds of, some do ethnic, some do a kind of general community, what Tapestry has done. But think about the potential, though. If they can get in and start making disciples of people of 4, 5, 6 different ethnicities, and they have influence in their home countries, or they go back one day, they're here for school, and they go, we never really know the influence they can have, or they go to another part of the states where there's another population of Burmese Christians that they can go. So the potential is really, really important. So I think them choosing not just a specific, the Burmese population of South Fork, even the Burmese population of Winston-Salem, they chose a community that had diversity. So when you're looking at, Pastor Jason, kind of what your church looks like from week to week, how does that diversity play into how you organize things, from small groups to your preaching to those type of, even your kind of evangelistic type outreach events and your discipleship? How is that diversity, since you know, you may be doing discipleship with 4 guys, and every single one has a different ethnic background. So how does that shape the kind of the life of your church, and especially when you were thinking of planting?
Question. I think the interesting thing about where we are is, I've been blessed to spend a lot of time overseas on different mission trips. Once it's kind of in your lap where you live, it's a different dynamic. What has worked for discipleship when you're in Southeast Asia doing a discipleship group in their context, and then you come back here, and that group of people is now in a different context. You're trying to engage them where they are as well. I think some of that we've been meeting in the community for about 8 months now, beginning to try to meet people, do some different things. And I think I think we've tried to purposely move slowly in trying to develop our structures and our systems to engage the diversity that's there, because I think my default is to do what I've always known to do, but I don't think it's going to translate well to that group of people. And so actually, one of the things I'm really excited about is tomorrow I have an opportunity to meet with a gentleman who is from the IND who has spent the last 8 or 10 years in Asia doing church planter training. And so I'm meeting tomorrow with other guys to kind of pick his brain about how do you start smaller discipleship groups in maybe people's homes. Mm-hmm. So in a way that's different than maybe, because our church has missional communities, and so our desire has been to have a missional community that is focused, centered in South Fork, because most of the 2 that we have right now, our core team doesn't live directly in South Fork, and so we're trying to engage there, but also engage our neighborhoods. And we're also we've got guys brought us some people from the neighborhood. People who brought us from the neighborhood still are pretty homogenous at this point. And so, but God has given us a few people that are from the community specifically. And so we're looking at how, if we are to engage the people there with the gospel, it's going to look different than maybe what we're used to doing. And so that's why I'm excited to meet this guy tomorrow, to think he's really familiar with some of you guys have heard of the T4T training. And hopefully that's going to give us at least something else we can try to be able to engage. We've relied heavily on the school of the last year to try to get the temperature of where people are and how we might engage them. And what I've learned is as you seek to engage a diverse community like this, it's going to take a lot of time. And my tendency is want to speed up or to get frustrated when we're not seeing people come when we try. You meet 100 people at an event and you're trying to get their names, get to know them, follow up. But it's hard to really get them involved the way that you're looking involved. So I think we're really trying to pray through it right now. We're trying to look for some different models of people that have done this well. And so I think moving forward, one of the things we talked about as a core team is if we really want to be multicultural, that means our worship is going to be very different. And so even though right now we all look fairly the same, we've talked about we've got to be consistently open-handed and very flexible about our preferences and our traditions, because as God brings us people that are very different than us, we need to worship differently. The way we praise God doesn't need to be in the white American way. It needs to represent the diversity God has given us as people come in. So I wish I could say we figured that out. I think I'm excited to see how God does that. But I'm hoping that something that is more based in the homes of the people that live in the community is going to be the most effective way. And so our desire this fall is to continue to be in the community, kind of find where those pockets of people are, and figure out how to do some things. One of the things we've thought about doing, which is really not a discipleship thing, but really a relationship building, is a closed closet, a thrift store. What are some things that we can do that will engage people, get them there, and allow us to have spiritual conversations with them that may produce some other opportunities? We've tried to engage a population of single parents that are there. How do we meet that demographic that's pretty ethnically rich and be able to engage them? And so we kind of have a target, but we're also trying to throw the darts at the target, not sure which one's going to hit the target yet. Just because there's such a diversity that we're not sure how to grab a hold of. And so we're trying to pull from different resources, different people that have done things well, and see how's it going to work in our context. So I hope a year from now, if we're in the conversation again, that we're going to see some traction, and we're going to see some people that are from different backgrounds that have begun to come and worship and even be able to engage at a discipleship level with them and see how God uses that. Because, like I said, we don't have all the answers. We're far from it, but God put us there, and we're seeking to engage. But we're definitely looking for other resources that will help us be effective because I think we have a lot to learn.
With that, with that being said, what has been the response from local established churches?
It's a good question. It's interesting when we dropped in there. One of the most staggering statistics, and I think Dustin would probably affirm this with any area of Winston-Salem right now, but the 30 closest churches to where we're meeting, all but 2 are declining. And so, based on attendance. And it's been interesting. The church we are meeting at went from 500 to about 30 now the last 20 years as the community changed. There's another church across the street that is pretty much on the precipice of closing its doors. There's a couple other churches up the road. It's been interesting. We've not gotten a whole lot of pushback or even really feedback. It's almost like the South Fork community kind of exists in a vacuum. There's just not a whole lot of presence there. I did find out yesterday that Calvary, which is up the road a couple miles, has chosen to adopt that school for the year. I did not know until yesterday. So part of that is you could say, well, man, that's our turf, and you're a big church, and we're a really small church. That's not going to work well. But if we're kingdom-minded and we want to be about the gospel, then they have a lot more resources than we do. We also have a lot of people that God has called to this community. So how can we partner together? Somebody said yesterday, man, utilize the resources they have for the gospel. I mean, they can do a lot that you can't do. So how do you partner really in that community? We've been tutoring. We've done a lot of different things that we've helped the school with. So I think there can be. I will tell you this: when we first landed there, and I was driving around and looking for some space for us to worship, I did meet a lady in the community. When I told her what we were doing, she said, "Well, why do y'all need to plant a church here? There's churches everywhere." I thought, well, that's a great question. Unfortunately, most people here are not. If they're not in church, we can only assume they don't know Jesus. Not that the two, going to church makes you a believer. However, if you're a believer, you should be in church. If you're not in church, then it would say that you probably don't know Christ. And so there's plenty of churches. I could probably throw a rock and hit 3 churches if I could throw it pretty far. And then if you go a little bit more, there's a couple more churches, but none of them have engaged this community that I have seen, which is why it shows up as a pocket of losses. Because it's I don't think it's a forgotten area, but I think it's a hard area. Yeah. I think the diversity makes it very hard. Much like Watown being such an impoverished area, makes it a very difficult area to get traction because you've got to put in a lot of time. And most people, we want to feel good about ourselves to drop in and do something for a week and then we're out. But building relationships and investing takes some time. And I think that's why we're going to see kind of slow return of effectiveness in this area because it's going to take a while to engage people and figure out how we love them.
Thanks, Jason. We're out of time, but man, thank you so much for coming and sharing about just I really wanted the group to hear your heart for why you chose South Fork because so often, and we're going to get into this in one of the other online lectures on this Thursday, but we often choose our model or approach to church planting before we choose the people, and so we start thinking, oh, here's how my church is going to look, and but then you neglect the fact that church is people, not the structure and the website you have, and
Can I say one more thing?
Go for it.
One of the things that we've tried to commit to as a church is right now I am the only paid staff member, but one of the things that we have really committed to is we want the next person we hire to be someone that is not white. And I know that sounds, you're being, but you got to put your money where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. And if we're trying to engage a community that's different than us, then we want the next person that's in leadership in official capacity that we're paying to be someone of a diverse background. And so one of the things you can pray for us is God will provide that person. Yeah. I would love to have somebody that it doesn't really matter, worship, something that allows us to represent the community that we're trying to engage. So that would be a prayer that we would have that God would provide that. Right now we've not seen that happen yet, but we trust that God will provide that. So.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'll go ahead and end our recording. I want to thank Pastor Jason from Tapestry Church to help us talk about choosing a focus group.